We were only going to leave it so long before we got onto AI. We've spoken about it several times that when people mention AI, heads go to ChatGPT, the sort of LLMs and the agentic side of things. But in this case, those repeatable tasks that are data rich, open to human error, basically. So it's not the robots are taking over, and this is a means of people losing their jobs, and it's a cost efficiency thing. On the face of it, this is squarely about better management of data.
This all started with a 5-year digital transformation strategy that started in 2022. Well thought out. This is 4.5 years in the making of getting to this. And that's a hugely valid point for everybody listening. That
this episode is brought to you in partnership with Adobe Acrobat.
Mr. Ryan Jones, King of the Marketing North. How are you doing?
Better for that title. That was very lovely and unexpected. I wish I was mentally dexterous enough to fire one back at you, mate. But how's things?
Yeah. Full of compliments. All I get is, "How are you doing, mate?"
Yeah, well, I promise. Well, let's see. Maybe within my takeaway, I'll over the course of the half an hour we record this, I'll think of something to fire back. But you've ambushed me with kindness, and I'm blushing, mate. But yeah,
brilliant.
I'm looking forward to this one. We've got a couple of not weird and wonderful, but certainly slightly different for us stories this week, I think.
Yeah, a bit of a tangent. I think maybe the sun and the heat's got to us a little bit when we were doing our research. So we've got some light-hearted articles that aren't that detailed, but there's a lot to get into them. And then where we're going to start today is less light-hearted, but massively important for the construction industry, which I think we'll dive right into. And this one isn't going away, and rightly so, because it's all about building safety. This comes from Construction News, although many publications reported about it. And this is Hackitt-led group calls for firmer approach to industry, which for me isn't really a surprise. And even going way back to when the industry safety steering group was set up, and subsequent or previous incumbents of that area, it was always going to be a tough ask for an industry that is so widespread and so diverse to change its approach to what it's always done, so to speak. But a positive step in the right direction with this new report. What are your thoughts on this one?
I think you've hit the nail on the head with all of that. I remember being at an event, must be 2 years back now, that Dame Judith spoke at. It was all about Building Safety Act and a little bit around products as well. But one of the big things that she was keen to reiterate with all of this, and so everyone, I would hope, listening to this, given it's construction disrupted, will be aware. But just to rewind a little bit for context for anyone that's new to the subject, Dame Judith Hackitt she led the inquiry eventually. The report that came out is now shorthand known as the Hackitt report. She took all of the findings from the Grenfell inquiry from a construction and a built environment point of view, and tabled recommendations, which have then led to things like the Building Safety Act, the Building Safety Regulator, by proxy, the Code for Construction Product Information, and so on, which we've spoken about recently. And yeah, she's to jump back to that event. One of the things that she was very keen to stress was that we can't just have legislation like the Building Safety Act that people feel press-ganged into complying with because they want to still sell into the sector and they want their business to still be viable. There has to be a meaningful cultural change within the sector. I think the feeling was that a big part of Grenfell was this kind of race to the bottom mentality, or if you want to call it value engineering, you can call it that. But this idea that everyone in the supply chain is working to such fine margins that everyone's looking for that opportunity to squeeze a little bit more out. And eventually, the thing that you end up squeezing is safety. You end up, making, like for what you would stress are like for like comparisons on product that aren't necessarily the same, or you skimp on labor, or you skimp on testing, or whatever the case may be. And so yeah, it's crucial that we don't just bully people into, you will comply with this, but people actually understand the reasons why we're taking those steps, and therefore there is a broader culture around health and safety. So that's the context. Obviously, Dame Judith is part of the ISSG, the Industry Safety Steering Group. She chairs that. And what they've done is they've recently, I think it's their 5th report, if I'm not mistaken, Pete, into how the industry has responded to the legislation changes, to the cultural change that has been requested. The headlines and some of the pull quotes, I think, as you say, within the coverage of the report last week were maybe not as balanced as the actual report itself. I thought having, and I think we'll talk about your analysis of it, and I'd be interested to see what your thoughts are. But my reading of the media versus the report, we've spoken about this idea of if it bleeds, it leads previously. But I thought the actual report itself was much more even-handed and much more fair than some of the coverage. It's absolutely right, as you say, the headline in Construction News that the ISSG are calling for industry to have a firmer grip on matters when it comes to safety, and that yes, they don't believe that we've gone far enough in both in leadership and in this cultural change around matters of safety. But there is some praise for things like the Construction Leadership Council and for the role that they've taken, and there's praise for the way that people are complying with the building safety regulator and so on. So I think progress made. It would be my take on it. I think what they say is very fair, very balanced. They give praise where it's due. But I think that the overall conclusion and the headlines are probably correct, that sadly, there is something of a firmer grip needed. And we've said before that we have some sympathy for particularly the SME end of the supply chain. And again, what I thought was interesting within the report is that it doesn't just talk about health and safety. There's some of the kind of pebble in the pond issues that would then ripple out and have an impact on safety. So things around remediation payments, things around the role of insurers in backing these schemes and getting them off the ground and so on. As I say, it's very even-handed. It takes a very, very broad view. There's more subtlety in it than the headlines would suggest necessarily. But yeah, sadly, I do think that they're absolutely right. There needs to be slightly a firmer grip on this from the sector, and that we probably haven't gone far enough quickly enough, given we're the best part of a decade on now from Grenfell, and we're still having this conversation.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's an industry where you give guidance, legislation, policies, advice, whatever it might be, and people just follow it. It just isn't that type of it can't be. It's just too diverse. It's too widespread. There's too many people within this supply chain, large and small, for that to happen. It's not like, for example, say a smoking ban where it's just clear cut. It's you don't smoke in these areas. That's it, done. It's quite simple.
Yeah.
There is that ambiguity to, well, what is safer than this, or what is safety personified? Particularly when you're dealing with things that are already built and constructed, and a lot of things are hidden in those buildings. So I think a stronger approach is required. The unnerving part is when they're talking about, some people think that they got off lightly, or that was kind of the tone in it, that it wasn't as authoritative as it should have been and as clear cut as it should have been. But like I said, it can't be. So I think the next step and the progress here, you do need these rules and regs for people to follow. It almost needs to be black and white, and that's no easy task. We're seeing it with procurement, like you alluded to, and that is part of it, and that comes up in this report as well. But it doesn't mention the planned ban on retentions, which was announced in March, which we covered in a previous episode. There's various things there which could be lined up and joined to make it a more robust industry. But then you've got to look at it from the bottom upwards, haven't you? And the sole traders and the SMEs that just want to fix a staircase and just want to do the plumbing and get on with their lives because that's their work and that's what they want to do. They need rules and regs, absolutely. In every industry, you need rules and regs so you're complying and it is safe. But when margins are thin, it's hard to. You don't want to lose these skilled trades because we're struggling as it is. But it's hard to deny the fact that you do need this robustness within the industry to make things safer.
Yeah, I agree. It's not a zero-sum game either, is it, mate? It's either you legislate or you drive the culture through, leadership and this inherent
Mm,
sort of we all pull together and make the sector better. I think you can have both. And when I say even-handed before, that was one of the big things that I took away from this is that legislation important, the role of supply side and demand side economics in driving this. We've spoken before, particularly at the minute where private money into sector is a little bit scared on the face of it, particularly private housing and so on. If central government is effectively client of choice, I think that's a really, really interesting opportunity that if you want to get onto this framework, if you want to bid for this particular piece of work, if you want to be a subby into this particular supply chain, you are going to have to comply with X and Y. But at the same time, they talk about one of the things that I think is really interesting, and we've spoken about this before with skills. There's a bit of a shoulder shrug whenever you ask people like, who should be responsible for this, fairly or not, and then they seem to be engaged lockstep with them. So maybe it is fair in this case. But as I said, the praise for the Construction Leadership Council and the role that they're taking within this, I think that's an interesting opportunity alongside legislation and alongside the economics of it for us to show some really sort of best in class examples of health and safety being taken seriously and the commercial gains for that, because I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I think that there's going to be myriad examples. We've spoken about the Queen's Terminal at Heathrow. It economically sound, commercially sound, etc. These things will exist, and again, the safety and culture on that as well was trumpeted as well within the previous case studies that we've looked at. So yeah, I don't see it all as zero sum game or these things completing. And then they talk a lot. One of the phrases that really stuck with me from the wider letter from the ISSG was this idea of a clear articulation of the future state. What is it that we are aiming for, and what does the sector look like? And yeah, I think it will take a little bit of top down leadership. To your point, I remember when the Safety Act was being rolled out, when it was going through the rounds in Parliament, attending several networking events and workshops where a lot of the talks were around, what is this act and what will it mean for the supply chain? And it was almost the patronizing way that, the SMEs and subbies and so on are spoken about as kind of like, well, how do you expect them to learn this? It's like, that's their job. Look at what they're doing is so integral and so important to the life safety of the people using these. But have we not learned? Again, the letter that they write with this, there's a section called Forward Look at the end. Grenfell is still far and away, sadly. I say sadly because sadly in that it was such a tragic event. There was such a sort of landmark watershed moment. But they note in there several others that have happened in the Middle East, that have happened in the Far East. The near misses that we've had in this country, or fires that thankfully haven't, been to the same size. I can think of one locally in Bolton, for instance, that look really, really nasty. And thank God everyone made it out of there safely. But yeah, what, are we just going to keep sitting around and waiting for the next one? And then we'll finally learn our lessons, and then we'll have another inquiry and we'll adapt these things more? Or are we just going to get hold of this now and just accept that we should be building safe buildings? I keep coming back to it, mate, that it is a massive thing. It's not, click your fingers, but this value engineering attitude of I can only make my margin if I pinch it from here and pinch it from there. We've got to find, and I know buildings have to be commercially viable, but yeah, we've got to fix that problem. Sorry, I will dismount my high horse now. Only to say that again, I would recommend that anyone listening to this, I would think, should have an interest in this topic. It touches all of us to some degree. Read the sort of reporting on it by all means, and again, we'll share links as we always do. But please go and read the full report. It's there is a lot in there, and as I say, it's pretty well balanced. It's not sensationalist. It's not accusatory. I do think it's worth a read.
Yeah, absolutely. And leading on to that, I think it's a really good time to bring in our partners for this, Adobe Acrobat. What Adobe Acrobat has allowed us to do is take this fifth report that we've been talking about there. You literally go to the URL and then click summarize this page, and it can do it for any web page, but we did it for the fifth report. I just want to skim right to the very bottom because it summarized it very nicely. Priority areas for future action. So greater engagement for the financial sector, clients, and those responsible for buildings in occupation is needed. Safety for residents must be central, but better supported for those that are managing the building. More communication and collaboration required across the supply chain, especially during remediation projects. And then the forward look that this summarised urged the industry to accelerate culture change, supported by government accountability mechanisms. And the final forward look from this summary was there was a call for integrated digital systems, more skilled workforce, a clear vision for the future of building safety. And that was all done from our partner, Adobe Acrobat, and the AI assistant that comes along with it.
But in this case, those repeatable tasks that are data rich, where open to human error, basically. So it's not the robots are taking over, and this is it's a means of people losing their jobs, and it's a cost efficiency thing. On the face of it, this is squarely about better management of data. So and needed. Again, we're all busy. We've all got day jobs to do, and there's a lot of information, isn't there, floating around. So a worthwhile tool and an absolute time saver. And just to pick up on one of the points there that Acrobat's raised, I hadn't come across this before, but the annual report to the construction industry from the building safety regulator, that point on transparency and sort of government being involved in that, they've taken all of the recommendations from Hackitt, and it's basically a very simple to follow scorecard as to, yes, we've achieved this, we're in progress for this, timescales, etc. Again, I think we should share that with everyone, because for my sins, as much as I'm invested in the Building Safety Act and CCPI and so on as part of my day job, that was something that I'd missed. But really, really interesting that the government are being that transparent. And I think if we're asking the sector to collaborate and to be open, then as Adobe has rightly pointed out, that we need government to be the same as well. So a useful little tidbit there.
Yeah, nice. Moving on to robo-dogs.
It was a matter of time. We were only going to leave it so long before we got onto AI. I thought you might have segued from it with some of those recommendations there on digitization, because it does. I was going to say dovetail, but dogtail would be a horrible pun, wouldn't it?
Use it.
Well, it's out there now. But we've done robo dogs before as well. This is this is a bit of a callback to the Sellafield story that we ran a little while back, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to. I'm not hot with my dog breeds, but I'm trying to work out what kind of dog would be more on the nuclear danger side and what dog would be more on the safety side. I'm going St. Bernard for nuclear. Always there, a bit loyal, barrel of rum round the neck. I think.
I don't know if I want my nuclear engineers drinking rum on the job, to be honest, Pete.
No, it's not a dog, isn't it?
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. This story in terms of dog breeds is from Construction Inquirer, and it's actually about McLaren employing a robot army for site quality checks. So for quality, I don't know, I'm thinking maybe what dog would be quality? Whoever won Crufts. Let's go poodle, a nicely shaved poodle.
My head went to beagle, sort of sniffer dog, that kind of thing. Could be.
Yeah. Well, if I ever need,
send in your thoughts, listeners. We'd love to know.
Yeah. Yeah. What breed of dog would you have on site to keep you safe? There's one for the listeners. Anyway, back to the actual story from Construction Inquirer. Yeah, and this is all about McLaren Construction, in partnership with Field AI, bringing general purpose robots to its UK construction sites. And what it means by this is that it isn't a robot as such where you control it by a remote or pre-program it. These are becoming more intuitive to understand how a site is changing and developing as it goes along, so it can move around autonomously and help with progression and safety checks on site, which is pretty exciting. What's your takeaway from this?
Yeah, it takes me back to the Skills England report on the various ways that AI could interact with construction and kind of what's coming. We've spoken about it several times that when people mention AI, heads go to ChatGPT, the sort of LLMs and the agentic side of things. But you and I were fortunate enough to meet Douglas, the Tilbury Douglas robot, which was very exciting last month, a couple of weeks back. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the Skills England report was talking about the use of robots, particularly in either environments that are unsafe for humans, as the Sellafield sort of nuclear spillage cleanup example that we've touched upon. But in this case, those repeatable tasks that are data rich, where open to human error, basically. So it's not the robots are taking over, and this is it's a means of people losing their jobs, and it's a cost efficiency thing. On the face of it, this is squarely about better management of data. So your robots on site from a spatial awareness point of view, and to your point on safety, quality, I guess cost management. What they'll be able to do is effectively feed their plans for the building into the AI, have the robo dog from Field AI sort of scan the space. It's I guess it would be LiDAR scanning technology or something similar, but it'll be able to compare and contrast the asset being created against the plans, look for any deviations, look for any changes, anything within there that looks unsafe to some degree, and just keep building layer upon layer of these scans as the project completes. And one would assume then to the end client, to the facilities manager going forward, etc., you have a ready-made sort of digital file there that shows the progress right the way through the build. So if someone were to ask, imagine a complete fit out. I'm thinking the older Hay job where everything had to be ripped out because of a mistake that someone made. But where does that cable run? Where does that pipe run? What material was that made out of? Who did the install work on X and Y? That is there from day one. So you can see from a new build point of view, remediation works. Just again, it probably dovetails nicely with our first story as well, doesn't it? That God forbid anything does go wrong from a safety point of view. There is a complete record there. There's no ambiguity as to what's been used and who's done it. So, I think it's really smart, Pete. I think it's a really, really clever way of. It's how AI should be used. It's a sensible integration. Like I say, on the face of it, it doesn't look like it's a cost efficiency thing in terms of losing jobs or whatever. You still need people to carry out the work. We're not at that point yet where the robots are actually doing the work for us. So your on-site roles are still safe, but the amount of data that this is going to be able to collect and scan and use, it's I think it's a really, really smart shout.
Yeah, and hats off to McLaren for doing it the correct way. There's a couple of key points in this article. Really, really short, but there's so much to take away from it and dig a little deeper into it. But this all started with a 5-year digital transformation strategy for McLaren that started in 2022. So that's for, we've got, say, a year to 18 months left of this digital transformation. So it's not like, as I suppose we can imagine, the McLaren board was sat round one day and thought, what do we need on site? I know, robo-dogs. Let's go and get them. This is well thought out. This is 4.5 years in the making of getting to this. And that's a hugely valid point for everybody listening, that with anything that we are unsure of that's going to transform a business, it's not something you just do in overnight. And I think that's the key there with all AI components and elements, that it should never be an overnight thing. It needs to be well thought out, and there be a strategy. The other part, again, linking to that strategy and looking towards the future past the 5 years, is that these robots, in the article, it says they use one universal brain. So what that means is that it isn't detriment to using a singular type of robot, a singular core piece of equipment that they can't progress through and move on from. So as the technology develops, as sites develop, as the way we work with these things develop, this brain can be moved, transferred, added to various other different types of technology, which is just fantastic and really well thought through. It isn't just we're using AI for this, job done. Who knows what will happen in the future? This seems really well thought out and a huge step in the right direction.
And I think that's the big thing as well, Pete. We've spoken about it before, that it doesn't necessarily mean rip it up and start again. I think, and I can talk about our business, service provider rather than someone actually doing work on site, but I think the lesson that we learned was the most effective way was to look at our existing processes and think about where efficiencies could be made, rather than thinking, oh, we're going to get left behind. How do we crowbar AI into this, or how do we reinvent this? It's just been looking for where these kinds of things would be useful, and that's done the trick for us, and it feels like that's what McLaren have done here. To your point, it's not a stunt. It's not, hey, we need some robots and we need a headline. They've managed to achieve that as a byproduct anyway. But it does feel entirely sensible. I think one of the things that I'd like to say, that again, just given the number of SMEs in sector, to your point on, this has taken 5 years and so on. I know there'll be a lot of businesses listening to this that panic on that basis, that we don't have the resource, we don't have a head of AI, we don't have a whatever. It's we're a team of however many, and the panic might be on that basis that they kind of get left behind. I would say keep an eye on these early adopters. I think that's what tends to happen in any sort of natural adoption curve, is that you'll have these pioneering businesses that they'll be working out the kinks for you almost. And there's nothing wrong with, if you don't have the pockets of a McLaren or the resources of a McLaren to learn. I won't speak for them and say reach out to them and ask for the lessons, but I'd certainly be keeping an eye on them, Tilbury Douglas and the others that have kind of put their heads above the parapet as leading in this space. And just see what you can learn and what you can take on board yourself. I don't be put off by the fact that either I don't know what I'm doing with this. Don't feel intimidated by it. Just try and learn what you can reasonably when you can, and see where you can fit this into your current workflows. Because I just in my head I can see a few people being intimidated by this and just not feeling they have the budgets, and if this is the way that the industry's going, then that would be a cause of concern for them. So I said the reason we're talking about it and the reason the media are talking about it is because these guys are the outliers for now. So I would say if you do nothing, there is a realistic chance that you do get left behind, but I don't think it needs to be as drastic as doing exactly what McLaren are doing. I think find how to make it work within the confines of your business and your processes.
Yeah, 100%. Start with the problem. See what tech's out there that can help you resolve that problem under financial constraints. Bang on. Quick question: did video kill the radio star?
Evidently not. Thanks to our good friends at Installer. A bit of a light-hearted one to finish this.
It is.
Pete. But obviously, congratulations to Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, who I'm sure are, without wishing to break any GDPR guidelines and say definitively whether they are listeners to this podcast or not, they may well be. So let's extend our best wishes just in case. I don't know where else they would get their construction sector news from, but let's assume they are.
I mean, when you said you got your invite, I was waiting for mine. Never came. I
tried.
But that's what you get when you're king of the North in marketing, isn't it? King of the marketing North. Get invited to these shindigs.
Hey, listen, I tried, mate. I did put a word in, but evidently I don't have that. I don't have that level of pull. If you've stuck with us through that ramble, we're talking about a story that ran in Installer show was a weekly mailer last week, that focused on tradespeople of the UK and their media consumption habits. And the headline led with Taylor Swift being the musical choice for today's tradespeople. But interesting again, if you strip the sort of frivolity of the Taylor Swift mention out of it, 74% of UK trades still primarily listening to the radio in their van, which I thought was, again, really interesting in the advent of streaming, of podcasts, of audiobooks, of everything else. But it doesn't surprise me that radio is still king, but 74%, that's pretty mind-blowing start. So anyone trying to take back to our day jobs, anyone trying to engage with the trades, radio might be the one.
Yeah, and that's what makes this so fascinating for two marketers. It is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, and this article's about 4 or 5 paragraphs long. I'm sure there's more data behind it. This was taken from the Installer show, which was last month at the NEC. Or was it this month? Anyway, I think it was last month. And like you say, 3/4 still listen to the radio while driving between jobs, and I think that's the key part there. So if you're driving between jobs, what are the likelihood that you're going to put an audiobook on, listen to a podcast where the radio's just on? You might catch half a tune, 2 or 3 songs. You can't. for me, podcasting and audiobooks, you do need that time, and it is almost an in isolation thing to do. I don't know many people that collectively listen to podcasts or audiobooks, and there will be people out there. 11, just under 12% said they regularly listen to podcasts. So, construction disrupted listeners, looks like you're 11% of fantastic work. Good work on that, because I can't think of any other podcast they'd be listening to. And moving on to what they're calling their guilty pleasures, which is quite interesting. So, on the music and the radio, they were also asked what their music tastes are like, and it seems like nostalgia's got a bit of a hold on our tradespeople. Yeah, go on then, Ryan. What would be your guilty pleasure before we give it away for what tradies are listening to? I mean, you've given one away there, but the rest of them are interesting.
Oh, do you know? I don't know that I feel guilty about any of the nonsense that I listen to. To be honest, it could be anything. I'm driving home yesterday with a bit of Cameo, bit of Word Up. So that would be anything in that 80s sort of synth funk. How about yourself?
Well, for all the young listeners that are listening, and I know we've got tens of them. Yeah, I don't mind a bit of 80s heart radio when I'm in the car, but I think, go on.
Well, interesting. I was going to mention heart. We did a piece of research with a client a couple of years back. We were looking at various sort of channels to reach. It was principally subcontractors, sort of hands-on contracting roles. And Heart was the number one. A little plug for Heart. I promise there's no commercial relationship here, but the number one station to reach them through, particularly Heart 80s it was, because we were looking at this is trade focused and this is deliberately for them, or it'll be talk radio type stuff. And yeah, overwhelmingly it was Heart that was the radio station of choice. So you're bang on trend with that one, mate.
Yeah, I'm more. I don't think the guilty pleasures, but yeah, I'm quite a. If you ever heard of someone called Grizz or Dead Mouse, I quite like listening to that while I'm working. Bit upbeat, just I'm not going to call it nonsense music, but it's quite methodical in a way, and it does get you going. But back to these guilty pleasures of our tradies. Oasis was up there. Now maybe that's linked to what's been going on, over previous months with their stadium tours and things like that, and coming back to the front. But Queen and ABBA were in there, which were quite interesting.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do is a little bit of field work to supplement this. My neighbours are having some work done. They've come around to warn me, and thank God we've got to the end of the record without being disturbed by it. But they're having quite a bit of work done on their house, so I'll keep an ear out for what's on the DeWalt radio while they're working, and we'll report back next week.
Other radios are available. Although I don't know any, but they are available apparently.
Right, over to you for takeaways then. Where do we end up this week?
I'm gonna keep my marketing head on then, and stick with this, and finish on more of a serious note. And that's to say, if you understand marketing, you'll understand that the traditional methods, or what potentially you class as traditional methods, TV, radio, outdoor, those types of advertising, they're not going anywhere. They're not dead. And I'm sure a lot of people within the industry will think they are dead. And I've heard family members say, "Oh, TV advertising, that's no one spends money on that." Yeah, they still do. They are a massive part. So don't forget these traditional methods. And let's link it back to construction. Similarly, our traditional methods shouldn't be forgotten in terms of building and how we do that and the skills that go along with it. So, yeah, marketing head on. Look more traditional methods of advertising, because they still can be hugely impactful on your audience.
Yeah, well, I'm with you, and it may feel like a slight paradox, I guess, but I think you can make the case for that using data. To your point, that the third story kind of is this, isn't it? That there's plenty of data that exists that frames that argument. And with the second story, with the agentic work that these field AI dogs are doing on site, and even within the first story on Hackitt, the transparency that we're asking for from government and from sector and so on, data helps us make more informed decisions and makes the case stronger to have those arguments. If something feels intuitively off, do you have the data to be able to back that up? And yes, we want to do the hearts and mind stuff, but the mind stuff is important. I think certainly most people that I meet in the sector are genuinely lovely people that want to do good work and want to help people. I don't think anyone is here setting out to rip people off or to make things unsafe and so on. But that cultural change is going to be a slow burn, and I think we need the evidence to demonstrate that there's a commercial case for doing so, and that it can be achieved. So I think data is crucial to all of that. Is to supplement your storytelling with some substance.
Correct. That's a really good way to end it. Back next week.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Like I say, I'll report back on the radio situation. I probably can't say too much. But yeah, I'm also attending something this week that may be of interest by way of policy. So yeah, I'll also report back on that as well as our usual 3 headlines.
Who couldn't want to come back and listen to that?
Yeah, there you go. There's a cliffhanger.